This was an era where a woman wasn't a person, she was a purpose. To serve, to bear children, to keep homes warm for men who rarely saw her pain as real. The Middle Ages, a time when the walls were high, but minds were narrow. People lived in fear of God, yet turned their backs on the women in their homes. A world where a woman's presence was service, her body was function, and her emotions irrelevant. Tombstones bore the names of men and their achievements. And women? They were remembered only as wife of or daughter of. She had no dreams of her own, no choices, not even ownership of her body. And the most heartbreaking part? All of this happened inside her own home, the place where she was supposed to feel safest. This isn't fiction. This is the truth the world buried for centuries. But today, we peel back that curtain. Today, we step into the narrow alleys of that time, where a medieval woman was born, and the moment she opened her eyes, her fate had already been sealed. In a medieval European village, if a girl was born, there was no celebration, only silence. Parents didn't rejoice. They quietly thought, another responsibility has arrived. She wasn't given a name in the records. There were no gifts or rituals. She was cradled in her mother's arms, but the mother already knew, in a few short years, she won't be mine anymore. Childhood truths. By the age of 5, she was taught how to wash clothes. By 6, she learned to scrub mud off pots, and by 8, she was expected to cook. School? Books? No. Only survival and society's rules. Her first life lesson? Learn to be silent. Her mother never said, "You can be something." She said, "Don't laugh too much. It's not ladylike. Don't talk back. Men don't like opinionated women." At just 10 years old, this little girl was already being treated like a grown woman. But she had no choices, no guidance, no voice. Marriage at 12. By 11 or 12, marriage negotiations would begin. Not based on love, not even compatibility. Marriage was a transaction. For land, family honor, or social gain. No one asked the girl, "Are you ready? Do you like this man?" She was simply dressed, draped in a veil, and handed over to a stranger's home. Often, the husband was 10, 15 years older. She was a child. But to society, she was now a woman, a mother at 15. There were no contraceptives in medieval Europe, no doctors, no safety, no support. By 15, she was likely pregnant, and the risk of death during childbirth was extremely high. Her body wasn't fully grown, yet it was already carrying the weight of another life. And even if she survived, within a year, she was pregnant again. A woman's life followed one cycle: pregnancy, childbirth, recovery, repeat. And society told her, the best wife is the one who gives the most children. Freedom? She couldn't choose her clothes. She couldn't choose where to go, who to talk to, or even what to eat. She didn't own property. She didn't own herself. If she replied too much, they said, "She's getting bold." If she stayed silent, the abuse continued, unchecked. That girl, who once played with dolls, now spent her days as a mother, a wife, a laborer. And the most tragic part? She had begun to accept that this was her fate. Marriage is supposed to change a life. But in the medieval era, a woman's life didn't transform. It simply became more painful. She became a wife, a mother, but never truly a person. From the moment she stepped into a stranger's house, dressed as a bride, she wasn't just entering a new home. She was leaving behind her last breath of freedom. Her husband wasn't just her partner, he was her owner. Her thoughts, her body, her nights, her rights, all now belonged to him. Inside the home, love, or just a habit? In most medieval marriages, emotional connection didn't exist. The woman had never met the man before the wedding, didn't know his mood, his habits, or even his name in some cases. His attitude was often the same. "You're my wife. You belong to me. You serve me." Some husbands only noticed their wives at night. During the day, they either ignored them or ordered them around. Did she have the right to say no? Never. If she refused physical intimacy, she was labeled unfaithful, stubborn. Maybe she's seeing someone else. And then came the punishment. Hours of silence, humiliation, sometimes slaps, sometimes weeks of cruelty, domestic violence considered normal in medieval Europe. Hitting a wife wasn't a crime. It was seen as a man's right to discipline. Even the church and courts believed that if a woman was disobedient, then it is a husband's duty to correct her behavior. So, if the wife talked back, justified. If the bread was burnt, justified. If the husband was just angry, still justified. And the woman? She had only one role: endure it all. Law always took the man's side. If a woman complained of abuse, the court would ask,
"Do you have witnesses?" But how could she? Abuse didn't happen in public, it happened behind locked doors. Right to divorce? Almost impossible, especially in Christian Europe. Only the man could apply for it. And only if he could prove she was unfaithful. No matter how badly she was treated, ending the marriage was considered sinful. Property and legal rights, just a dream after marriage. A woman lost her identity. She wasn't Anna anymore. She became Mrs. Someone. Could she buy land? No. Could she run a business? Barely. Could she manage her own money? Not without her husband's permission. Legally, she didn't exist. And if the husband died, people said, "Poor woman, now she's all alone." But in truth, she had been alone since the day she got married. Was her only purpose to bear children? She gave birth without any medical help, without mental rest. Year after year, one child after another, her body grew weaker, her mind darker. If she gave birth to a son, celebration. If she gave birth to a daughter, disappointment. And she'd say, "One day, you two will walk the same road." A woman's journey became her daughter's curse. Having her own thoughts, a sin. If a woman questioned too much, read too much, or spoke about her rights, people said, "She's a witch." Women were killed, burned, alive, drowned, or hanged simply for being different, because she dared to think, because she dared to speak. Silent suffering. Who would care anyway? She cried at night, not for the pain, but because no one ever asked, "Are you okay?" There was no one to listen, no one to understand. Some women slowly fell into deep depression. Others lived only for their children, and many stopped even remembering what it felt like to be alive. A woman is made of more than just flesh. She's built from dreams, emotions, dignity. But the medieval world saw her as nothing more than a living tool, slowly killing every part of her spirit. Night wasn't a time for peace, not for her, not in the medieval world. When the torches dimmed and the world fell quiet, the weight of silence fell the heaviest on the women who lived within stone walls and wooden ceilings. The day may have belonged to duty, but the night, that belonged to her pain. Her husband, tired from labor or perhaps simply from power, would return home, and for her, this was not the end of the day, it was the beginning of another test. Intimacy wasn't an act of love. In those times, it was law. The man had the right. The woman, she didn't have the right to say no. If she denied him, she wasn't tired or hurting. She was accused, disobedient, cold. There was no concept of consent. That word did not exist. Her body was not her own. If she resisted, he would remind her, "You are my wife. You were given to me. You belong to me." And then would come the silence, the long, heavy silence of punishment. Some men wouldn't speak to their wives for days. Some would hit them. Some would force their will anyway, and when it was over, roll over and sleep as if nothing had happened. She would lie there, awake, hurting, staring into the dark wooden beams above, listening to the sound of her children breathing in the next room, wondering why the walls never echoed her pain back to her. No one came to ask if she was all right. No one asked if she wanted this life, because no one thought her opinion mattered. Medieval marriage didn't ask for a woman's heart. It only demanded her obedience. And yet, she woke up the next day to cook, to clean, to raise children with the same man who never saw her as an equal, to serve a house that gave her no warmth in return. She held in her screams, she swallowed her questions, and each day she buried a small part of herself, just to survive. But even this wasn't the worst of it. There was a pain she couldn't speak of, a suffering that had no name, a cycle that came every month and turned her body against her. Periods. In the medieval world, menstruation wasn't biology. It was sin. If a woman bled, she was unclean. Some churches didn't let her enter during those days. Many households forced her to sleep separately, eat separately, live as if she were contagious. There was no comfort, no hygiene, no care. She used rags, washed them in silence, hid them in corners. There were no sanitary products, no education, no conversations. If she cried from pain, people believed she was overreacting. Some believed menstrual pain was divine punishment for Eve's sin. It wasn't seen as natural. Tea was shameful. She was taught to hide it, to carry her monthly suffering like a thief hides stolen gold. Invisible, silent, guilty. But silence could be deadly, because in the medieval world, if a woman spoke too much, thought too much, or dared to live differently, she wasn't seen as strong. She was labeled, it didn't take much. A woman who lived alone? Witch. A woman who healed with herbs? Itch. A woman who didn't marry? Witch. A woman who questioned her husband? Witch. No proof was needed, just fear, just gossip, just a whisper from the wrong neighbor, and she could be dragged into a square and burned alive. Some were drowned in rivers, tied to stones, thrown into lakes. If they floated, guilty. If they sank and died, innocent but dead. Women were killed for being curious, for being bold, for daring to live beyond the script handed to them at birth. This fear didn't live in stories, it lived in bedrooms, in kitchens, in prayers whispered behind closed doors. Women began to silence even their own thoughts, afraid that even thinking was dangerous. They learned to survive by erasing their own identities. The lucky ones had children who grew strong. Some had husbands who were kind, or at least less cruel. But even then, her name was forgotten. She wasn't remembered for her endurance, her sacrifices, her silent battles. She was remembered, if at all, as the wife of Lord William, the mother of Sir Thomas, the daughter of Merchant Henry. No one remembered the woman who stayed up all night tending to a sick child. No one remembered the woman who bled and cooked and prayed and hid her pain. No one wrote poems about the woman who saved her family from famine by eating nothing for days. History remembered the kings, the knights, the wars, but history buried the women. It buried their names, their faces, their stories. She was the spine of the medieval world, but never its crown. She built the homes, she raised the warriors, she kept the fire burning even when it burned her from the inside. And when she died, her tombstone didn't hold her name. Sometimes it didn't exist at all. Because in that world, a woman's life ended the same way it began, in silence. This was not just a time of castles and kings. It was a time where every woman fought a war no one saw, and when she lost, no one remembered. And yet, she kept living, not for herself, but for her children, for her daughters, who she hoped would one day live a little freer, and for her sons, who she prayed would never repeat the sins of their fathers. She may have lived in chains, but in her heart she planted seeds of freedom, and those seeds would bloom centuries later, when women finally began to speak, to write, to stand tall, and to reclaim the voices that the medieval world tried to erase.